Text, Jobcast by Indeed. Show of Force resume tips for military service members and spouses. Andrew Dennis, Military and Veterans Program.
Welcome, Jobcast by Indeed. Show of Force, resume tips for military service members and spouses. Let's meet the team. So we have Dan Donlin, Global Enablement. He grew up on Travis Air Force Base in California. He's been at Indeed for about 4 years and helps with Indeed's training teams. We have Natalie, who comes from a long line of military members serving in her family. Her brother is actually current active duty in the U.S. Marine Corps. She's on the client success team. We have Mike, Project Management. He's been at Indeed for 4 years. He's a part of the Veterans and Allies IRG here at Indeed. He's also Project Management for internal platforms. We have Jacqueline, who is on Talent Acquisition and Attraction team. She is a technical recruiter, and she's also a military spouse. And we have Solomon, who is a captain in the Marine Corps Reserves, and he is a part of the sales team in Austin. I myself, Andrew Dennis, Veteran Programs, Senior Strategist, and we're happy to have all of you here and join us as we kick this one off.
Dan Donlin, Global Enablement, Indeed.
Thank you so much, Andrew Dennis. My name is Dan Donlin, and I'm going to give you a brief overview on why you should have a resume on Indeed. And you might be thinking, I already have a resume I created in Word. Why should I bother setting up my resume on Indeed? Well, our data shows that job seekers with a resume on Indeed hear from employers 4 times more often. And think about it this way. Would you rather put up a personalized billboard on Route 66 in the middle of nowhere, or Times Square where people can see it? So there are benefits from having a resume on Indeed. First, your resume will look great. Indeed formats your resume so it can be shared with employers on mobile, tablet, or even desktop. If you want a hard copy of your resume, just click the Download Resume button on the right, and it will generate a PDF for you to save or print. Next, with an Indeed resume, it is easier to apply to jobs with just a few clicks, even from your phone. And here's the big one. It allows employers to find you. There are over 3 million employers globally who use Indeed to hire. With a public resume on Indeed, they can search for and find you.
Create your Indeed resume.
Now let's build your Indeed resume. Once you're logged into your account, you can go to my.indeed.com to begin your Indeed resume. Or you can click the person icon in the top right of the Indeed homepage and select Resume from the drop-down menu. You'll be given 2 options, upload resume or build your resume. We're going to build a resume today, but the process is similar when uploading your resume. So now I'm going to pass this over to Mike to do a breakdown of a great resume for you. Thank you, and have a great day.
Mike Cuccaro, Project Management, Indeed.
Thanks, Dan. I'm Mike Cuccaro, and I'll be covering some of the Resume Builder. So the Resume Builder tool will take you through the key resume elements 1 through 5 here. Contact information, educational degrees, work and volunteer experience, skills, additional information like job preferences, and then you'll be able to add sections to include military service and certifications, including security clearance. Now, when you click Build a Resume, you'll be taken through steps that will populate a resume template for you, and we're going to walk through those steps now. First step is to enter your basic contact information. Name and contact info should include your full name, your email address, and a phone number. And you want to use a professional email address that you check regularly. An outdated email service like Hotmail or Yahoo might signal that you aren't current with technology. And you don't need to include a full home address on a resume. This is personal and sensitive information, and so you should be cautious about who you share it with. And employers may make assumptions based on your full address. For instance, they may assume your address will be too far of a commute and screen out your application. Also, if you're open to having conversations about opportunities anywhere in the United States, then list United States, for instance. Or if you have your sights set on a specific state or a specific city, then list that in this field. The next step will be to add your education. The importance of educational background will vary based on the job or the industry where you're applying. If you haven't completed a degree, you can list currently enrolled. And there's no need to include the year you graduated. And unless specified in the job description, you don't need to include your GPA either. Next, you'll add your experience. And it's not necessary to include everything you did in your past jobs. Instead, focus on achievements and career highlights over responsibilities and duties. and ideally 10 years back is as far as you want to go. And if you're just getting out of the military, add your various roles held in the military in a language that aligns with civilian roles you're applying to. For example, company commander could be translated into project manager or program manager, depending upon your experience and the positions you're targeting. And there's a section coming up where you can add more details about your military career, but for the work experience section, you'll want to correlate it to the jobs you're applying to. In translating your military experience, it's a delicate balance. You want to replace military terminology with widely known terms without generalizing your accomplishments too much to ensure the value of your achievements and their impacts can be understood. Presenting your experience clearly and confidently is key for this section. And here's some tips to make your experience shine to employers. Avoid overused phrases or words that have lost their meaning, like hard worker, motivated, go-getter, people person, or team player. They really won't help you stand out from other applicants. And try to avoid business school jargon like synergy, results oriented, or best of breed. In addition to any technical skills, be sure to show your soft skills off. When employers read your resume, they're looking for any clues about what kind of employee you'll be. So show them your best qualities. For instance, show how organized you are. If the information in your resume is categorized meaningfully, flows naturally, it speaks volumes about how you think and organize your priorities. Don't just say you have a skill, demonstrate it by telling a one-sentence story. Try to give examples of your teamwork, adaptability, creativity, or problem solving and communication skills. Employers want to know that you can work with others and be able to change when the job calls for it. And stick it out when things get tough. For example, about this video, I might say that I partnered with internal teams to develop the curriculum, content, script, and then personally performed a training which was recorded and delivered to new users. This one sentence tells a story that demonstrates skills in teamwork, training, content creation, and communication. Use numbers and percentages to show your accountability and how you create results. Say things like led process change that increased production 50%. For a military example, I might say, I partnered with department heads and foreign government agencies to develop plans and coordinate communications for humanitarian assistance, resulting in over 100 successful humanitarian operations. Take the time to proofread. Resumes with spelling errors or typos are a top complaint of employers, and they certainly don't make you look good. Try reading your resume aloud backwards. It's awkward and time consuming, but it's a great way to catch minor mistakes that you might otherwise miss. And an outside perspective is always a good idea. Ask a friend or mentor or a family member to review your resume. Include prior positions. While a long tenure can be impressive, employers are even more interested if you've had an upward progression. So that usually means promotion, but can also mean increased responsibility. So highlighting how you've grown, your responsibilities at a job or held different roles can show employers that you're motivated, resourceful, and have taken the initiative. And use action verbs to quantify your accomplishments.
Achieved, accelerated, assembled, drove, developed, built, enacted, expanded, constructed, exceeded, improved, guided, sharpened, increased, handled, simplified, implemented, produced, performed, trained, and volunteered.
Here's some examples of those. This is about showing rather than telling what you did. Use strong action verbs like achieved, exceeded, or drove, and quantify what you've accomplished. For instance, held weekly status meetings to share process updates can be turned into initiated weekly status meetings to communicate efficiency gains, leading to 30% reduction in time to resolve. Now I'll turn it over to Solomon to go over the remainder of the resume builder.
Solomon Rima, Sales, Indeed.
Thank you, Mike. So I'm going to go ahead and walk you through a few additional areas in the resume builder that can really help separate you from the pack. First up is the skills section. Experience is only one element of why you might be a good candidate for a role. The other is your aptitude to learn the job. You can showcase this through the skills you add to your resume. The resume tool may recommend skills to add based on the work experience you already entered, but you can also enter skills in the text box, which will assist you by auto-populating known skills as you type. A few items to note here. If you're building out your master resume, don't be afraid to add any and all skills you feel you have. You'll be able to trim your resume down to just what's relevant once you've identified the type of job you're aiming for. If your skills include any military-specific language, do your best to convert that to civilian terminology. And lastly, don't forget to add your soft skills. For example, your critical thinking, your leadership, your teamwork, and your attention to detail. These are very oftentimes the actual skills that employers are looking for when targeting military veterans. So we want to make sure we're really highlighting those. All right, so another great way to evaluate your skills is to just test them. Indeed provides over 50 skill assessments for you to take. These are short tests created by actual psychologists covering a variety of skill categories, including administration, customer service, technology, sales, just to name a few. This can help you really stand out to employers by showing that you have the skills a job requires in a way that maybe your work history or educational background may not show, especially if you're trying to change fields. Now, I want to really stress here how impactful the skill assessments can be for you. Whether an employer is looking through current applicants to their job posting or searching through the resume database to find potential new applicants, they may be reviewing hundreds or even thousands of resumes. So they're going to want to start filtering these down to a small group to contact first. One of the main ways they're doing this is by selecting just those candidates that have completed the assessments they're looking for. So just taking a few minutes to complete an assessment can be really the difference of you getting passed over on the first go, or you getting a closer look from the hiring manager. So you can access the Indeed assessments at the bottom of your resume profile, below certifications and licenses. Once you've completed an assessment, you have the option to share the result on your saved resume. You can hide these results at any time, but you can't retake the assessment. You can find your completed assessments on your Indeed profile. You may find that some employers might actually require that you take an assessment to apply to their job. But if you already have it completed, it'll help save some time when applying to those jobs. Remember too, if you take an assessment that is part of a job application, your score will only be visible to the employer that issued the test and anyone they choose to share your score with. Now, as a quick tip, if you want to showcase your skills using Indeed assessments, I'd recommend to first take a test in an area that isn't really relevant to your career. So that way you can take a look at it, practice it, get a good feel for how the layout is. After your assessment is complete, you can choose whether you would like to make it visible to employers. To do this, you'll navigate to your Indeed profile, scroll down to the assessment section, and toggle on or off the visibility of your assessment result. All right, and finally, we're going to add some optional components like job preferences, recognition, and a summary or headline statement. Now, a summary can be exactly that, a summary of your professional career. I typically recommend doing this if you already have work experience in the field you're going for. Or it can be a objective/goal statement, which could be really useful for briefly explaining any gaps in employment, maybe a change in career, or why you would be a great fit for a particular job. Now, an example of an objective statement may be highly driven military veteran seeking a full-time position in manufacturing that will capitalize on my military training, leadership, and management skills. An example of a professional summary may be qualified warehouse manager with 15 years experience in planning, coordinating, and managing the shipping and receiving functions of an entire warehouse in a fast-paced, large volume manufacturing environment. So after this step, the tool will take you back to the resume profile view where you can add other sections. And as a quick side note here, as I mentioned, reasons to use the objective, things like gaps in employment and job hopping can be huge red flags for employers that can cause you to get ruled out immediately. So what could look like a job hopping and gaps in employment may in reality just have been someone who was working short-term contracts or someone who took time to travel or focus on family after getting out of the service. If this is the case for you, I'd highly recommend annotating this in your work experience. And you can do this just by placing that in parentheses next to your job title. So for example, warehouse manager, parenthesis, contract role, and parenthesis. All right, and as we get into the military service section, I do want to point out that what you do here may differ on whether you have military and civilian work experience or just military. Either way, it's incredibly important to fill out the required areas here, so that way our system and employers can recognize you as a military veteran.
Click the link on your Indeed resume to add sections to include military service.
Now, if your recent work experience is all military, then you'll have already filled out your job descriptions in the steps that Mike had covered previously. So you'll really only need to add your branch, rank, and any commendations if applicable. Now, if your resume is mostly comprised of civilian employment experience, then you may want to add the additional description of your military work if it's relevant towards the career you're going for. And when filling this out, you'll create a military experience section with subheadings listing your military positions and the date you held each position. You'll separate your military experience from regular work experience, and that'll help it stand out quite a bit. Now, doing this, you'll add a bulleted list of your responsibilities and achievements under each position. You'll make sure to highlight military experience that uses skills required in the jobs you are applying for. And just like in your written evaluations you may have had as NCOs or officers, you want to quantify your achievements with statistics wherever possible. And then lastly, adding your military honors will also help prove your excellence and commitment to your work. So make sure to include those in the commendations box, or you can just add a new section for awards. All right, now on to certifications. So for a lot of jobs, an employer will need to know if you have a certain license or certification. You can use this section to list any certifications or licenses you may have or have had in the past. If it is expired, just annotate that, but it can still be really helpful to list it since it shows that you were able to get it once, can likely get it again pretty easily if needed. This is also where I would add security clearance data, whether it's active or inactive, because it will show that you have held a clearance. All right, and almost done now. So last step, as Mike mentioned earlier, is to take the time and review your resume again for errors in both spelling and grammar. I know this step may seem obvious, but I've spoken with a lot of employers who have pointed out errors in a resume when providing me feedback on a candidate. This can show a lack of attention to detail, and that can be the difference of getting the interview or getting passed over. Now, I'd really like to encourage you to take Mike's recommendation as well and get a non-military contact to read your resume. A non-military person can help identify parts of your resume that may not be clear enough to civilians. You can use their feedback to refine your resume so your military experience is a bit clearer to potential employers. If you do make substantial changes, just be sure to have your contact reread that resume again and confirm that they can understand it. All right, and you're done. So you've built your resume on Indeed now. Now you just need to click on Download Resume link and select the template you want to use. The formats we have follow best practices, and your resume will download as a PDF. You can also share a personal link to your resume if you like. And then if you want employers to be able to search for you in the resume database, set your resume to public. With Indeed Resume, your personal information will not be shown until you agree to communicate with an employer that you're interested in. If your resume is set to private, your resume is hidden in the employer search, but you can still use it to apply to jobs on Indeed. All right, so now you'll be able to use this resume to one-click apply to the jobs on Indeed. Keep in mind though that you can have only one resume saved. So if you've created a master resume with all your information, you'll want to download it and then trim your resume down to make it more targeted towards just the roles you're applying for. We do want to make sure it's short, concise, and to the point for hiring managers who are reading it. And this is the last section for me, but I want to take a quick look at the resume templates I mentioned. So one of the most important things about your resume is that it is clean, meaning it is a professional looking and easy to read resume. If you're unsure what a modern professional resume looks like, you can always start by browsing free templates on Indeed that have been created based on employer preferences.
Indeed.com/profile/resume-templates.
When you build a resume on Indeed, you also have an option of downloading it in one of those templates. Now, while the specs of a clean and professional resume may vary by industry, you can go ahead and at least start by making sure your resume meets the following standards. It fits comfortably on one page, unless you're an executive or senior leader. The margins are no less than 0.5 inch, no more than 1 inch. It's one professional, easy to read font is used throughout the resume. And the font size is 10 to 12 points, apart from section headers, which can be slightly larger. And then the right font may vary by industry, but it is typically best to select a stylized sans serif font, such as Arial, Helvetica, Calibri. And finally, bolded name and section headers. So that covers my piece, but I'm gonna go ahead and pass it along to Natalie, who's gonna walk you through how employers are actually reviewing your resume. Thank you.
Natalie Grun, Client Success, Indeed.
Thank you, Solomon. Now that we've covered the foundation of building out your resume, we're going to jump into understanding how employers review resumes. Remember, your resume will most likely go through an applicant tracking system, or an ATS, before it's read by human eyes. An ATS is a software used by employers to sort through all of the applications they initially receive for a job posting. It parses the resume, breaking it down into sections to speed up the screening and selection process. That's why we avoid using complicated resume formats. An ATS may struggle to read unstructured resumes, meaning some important pieces of information on your resume may not be recognized, and a resume could be overlooked if it's not formatted correctly. To help get past the ATS, it's important that you carefully read the job description and tailor your resume accordingly. Recruiters and hiring managers filter through resumes by using the ATS to identify specific keywords and phrases that indicate the application is a good fit for the role. Include keywords that apply to your background in your resume summary, skills, and professional experience sections. Avoid over-adding keywords because the ATS will generally be able to flag by including keywords in a natural language instead of carelessly adding a high volume of keywords throughout.
Match keywords from the job description.
How do you know what keywords to add? Well, an easy way to find out what skills are required is to check the job description. Pick out the skills in the job description that you do have and make sure to add those to your resume. Also, reviewing job descriptions is a great way to think about your next move. What position do you want? What skills are required for that position? What skills do you already have? And what might you be missing? Now that your resume is ready to go, show employers that you're available by adding the Ready to Work toggle. Employers who are searching for candidates may see this when your resume is set to public, and this shows you are ready to start immediately. You can change this setting on your Indeed profile at any time. Though people think that recruiters spend an average of 5 minutes reviewing a resume, in reality, data shows that employers spend an average of 7 seconds reviewing a resume. That's why it's so important for you to make it easy for employers to find key information on your resume and to include keywords employers are looking for.
Employers search for resumes by role and location using filters and advanced search techniques to refine their results. Go to resumes.indeed to navigate the Indeed resume database like an employer.
Just as you're looking for job listings, employers can search Indeed's resume database to source candidates for open roles. Employers can use the what and where prompts to search for resumes by job title, industry, location. Then they can even refine that search by using filters on qualifications like education and certain skills. Employers can filter for military resumes only, ensuring your resume shows up. If you're curious about what it's like for employers using the Indeed resume database, you can take a peek at resumes.indeed.com. Here's a hint. You could also use this as a way to scope out the competition and see what others in similar roles are including on their resumes. A few Indeed insider tips. When you update your resume, even if only with a few small tweaks, it can get pushed to the top of an employer's search result. It is labeled recently updated. Indeed resumes updated in the last week are up to 3 times more likely to be contacted than resumes that were not. You can update your resume with new keywords, results of a new skills assessment, and more. A strong resume can streamline your job search process, helping you showcase your strengths and get you one step closer to your dream job. With some diligent work up front, you can turn this fundamental job search document into one of your strongest professional assets. Now that we've covered how to make your resume great, I'm going to pass it along to Jackie, who's going to talk about cover letters.
Jacques Scaramazzo, Talent Attraction, Indeed.
Thanks, Natalie. So you worked so hard on mastering your resume. Is there even a need to build a cover letter? Well, that depends. So you've completed all this hard work on your resume, maybe even multiple resumes, and you're probably wondering, do companies even look at cover letters anyways? How do you know what to say or what an employer is really looking for? Let me tell you a story. My husband enlisted in the Navy and I was a recent grad, absolutely no industry experience. We got stationed in Honolulu where I knew absolutely nobody. The only position I could land was working as a temp employee, which, side note, I absolutely loved. We spent 5 years in Hawaii, with the last 2 being a stay-at-home mom. When we transitioned out of the service, I knew I had an uphill battle to showcase my skills with the 24-month gap in my work experience on my resume, and the work experience that I had was all over the place. So I took the time to write a cover letter that outlined my ambition and willingness to learn. Based on my cover letter, admitted by my then employer, they gave me a shot at an interview. So my message to you all is, why not take the time if it gives you that extra inch?
The formula for a successful cover letter.
To capture the employer's interest and make sure they remember you, we recommend using a straightforward formula. Header, greeting, attention getter, skills qualification, wrap up, and closing. Understand that it is nearly impossible for a person to showcase their passion and personality through a resume. You're highlighting your skills, experience, your accomplishments on the resume. This is where a cover letter comes into play. Your focus in this letter is to highlight your passion for the industry, your interest in the company, and how your professional ambition and goals align with the role that you're applying for. For those of us in the military community, this can be particularly important as we may be looking at a career in a different industry, or our educational experience doesn't quite align with the position we're applying for, or we're just wanting to get a foot in the door to show off our skills.
Browse cover letters by job title for inspiration. Access more than 300 sample cover letters. go.indeed.com/cover-letter-samples.
Now you're saying, okay, Jackie, you sold me. Don't worry, you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you're writing a cover letter. Indeed actually has a database of 300 sample cover letters by job title, so you can take a look and get some inspiration.
go.indeed.com/military-resume.
Now that you're done, you're getting ready to start applying for those jobs, but hold on. One more thing that we want to showcase is that Indeed's military transition experts are ready to review your resume today. Complete the questionnaire by clicking the link above, and a career coach who is experienced in the military community will review your resume, then curate a 10-minute video with personalized recommendations. So what do you need to do? Complete a questionnaire about what you have done and what you want to do next. Our career coach will review your response and your resume. Within a week, you will receive a 10-minute video plus notes with personalized recommendations to improve your resume. We are here to help. Check in with us at indeed.com/hire/veterans to find resources and support to get you through this exciting career change. We thank you all for taking the time to meet with us today. We wish each and every one of you the best of luck in your professional growth. Great. Now let's get into some of these questions. You all know myself and Drew, but I want to introduce some other folks that decided to join us for some of this Q&A panel now. So I'm going to go ahead and have Megan, why don't you kick us off?
Hi, everybody. So I'm Megan Convery. I'm a technical recruiter for Indeed. So what I want to jump right into is actually what Natalie talked about. How should we customize a resume for a specific job or company with that'll get us through this software? So that's the ATS, or applicant tracking system, is what's being discussed there. The more keywords pertaining to the job description and the role, the more likely that the ATS will pull up your resume and then it'll get in front of a recruiter's eyes. We just also mentioned, as Jackie had mentioned, we do have a resume review component that creates a video specialized and tailored to what you want to do. Matching keywords from the job description can be as simple as copying and pasting a job description and plugging it into a website called worditout.com. Worditout.com is actually something where it creates a word cloud. And so the larger the word, the more it showed up in what you just copied and pasted. So let's say management experience is something that shows up quite a bit in the job description. Well, management will be pretty large as a font than other words. So if you've got management experience, be sure to plug that in. But I think it's really helpful that within your resume, you can just see what keywords pop up and then go from there. So hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Megan. So I want to come over to Tim. Tim, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I can read this question that I think you'd have a really great answer for.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Kirk. I work here at Indeed as a senior facilitator on our employee development team, kind of focusing on learning and development, but I'm also a veteran myself and co-chair with our inclusion resource group here at Indeed. And pleasure to be with you all today.
Okay, and for this question, there is a question from Dean. Experience, relevant to experience. If you only are recommending to go back 10 years, how do you include military background if it's in the more than 10 years past?
Thank you, Jackie, for sharing that. So one of the things when you're looking at your resume and you want to reach back, let's say into the vaults, it's 10 plus years, whatever that might be. I think what you need to do on your resume is within that year span. So let's say you're putting your military service or one of the different areas within which you served yourself. Because we know during your time of service, you do lots of different types of roles. One of the things that you can do is highlight that specific time frame and role, because what employers are looking for on your resume is specific measurable impact. So you just don't want to throw, I have 15, 20 years of experience on there. That doesn't tell me anything as a hiring manager. What does tell me something is during this one time frame and I did X number of things or had this type of impact or increased this percentage, whatever that might be, you want to focus on those 2 to 3 things. Now, this is just your resume. And remember, your resume is a snapshot. You have the opportunity to put the wealth of all of this extra information on, let's say, your LinkedIn profile. That's where you can put everything else out at, because rest assured, employers will be probably checking that out as well. And so that's where you can put everything else, but you're looking for that specific measurable impact for the different roles that you're trying to put in. And so, yes, if you need to reach in the memory vault, put it in there, but make sure it's specific and applicable for that job that you're looking for.
I love it. And I'm sure everybody has a comment on this, but I did see somebody else asked a relevant question in terms of a reservist having a lot of civilian experience. And just to kind of echo Tim, in your resume, I can't preach enough about targeted resumes. If it's relevant experience, then put in the description from your military service, but that doesn't mean that you don't add. You can always add at the bottom of the resume Navy reservist and your dates if you want to put that, or just Navy reservist on the bottom of your resume so then that they know. But also on your Indeed account, you can add that either on your resume, or there is a section at the bottom of your Indeed account where you can put in the details of your military experience if you don't feel that they are relevant to some of the industries and experiences that you're trying to leverage.
So real quick, Tim, you mentioned putting on relevant experience. One of the questions is, can you have too many skills on your resume? And I think the answer to that is yes, because the more skills you have, the less the relevant ones shine through in your resume. So just to add that, I think really honing in and putting the most important skills are more important than too many. Quality over quantity.
The only other thing that I can add to that too is one thing that helped me when I was transitioning out of a different field, even to come to where I work now here at Indeed, is imagine yourself on an X and Y axes and you are looking for a role. And on those X and Y axes, let's say, right, we have skills and you have space. What you need to do is figure out where you can anchor yourself. And so what I mean by that is either in skills or in space. If you can't anchor yourself, and so let's say you are going to anchor yourself in your skills. And so let's say you did an HR type of role in the Army or the military, and you were doing administrative work. So you can anchor yourself in the skills of that job so that then you can transition into adjusting into the space of the civilian world. If we did the opposite, where you can't anchor yourself, you don't have the skills, but you understand the space. So even when you were in the military, let's say you were doing organization, project management, efficiencies, and you want to transition and gain some more skills, then you need to anchor yourself. And I understand how to create project reports, how to do these timelines. I need these additional skills. What could happen is if you don't anchor yourself in either, then you don't have anything to fall back on. And it goes back to what Megan had mentioned. You want to highlight those skills to come through. So anchor yourself in skills or space depending on how you're navigating, and really think about how you need to tweak your resume.
Okay, I'm seeing a couple questions coming up about education, and Christina, you are the expert at this. I am excited to hear your answers for these. So first question, I'm going to give you two of them. Is it recommended to list education, the education section on a resume, if you've only been to high school from over 25 years ago and do not have a college degree?
I would say for that specific instance, you don't necessarily need to add your education. Those 25 years of experience are going to be more than enough experience that the recruiter can really understand your background and the skills that you have. Of course, if you did have a college degree, it doesn't hurt to put it, on your resume. But again, if you don't and, you haven't completed it, that's totally okay. A lot of jobs these days are requiring less and less education, those, 4-year bachelor degrees. So, some of the roles you'll see, you might notice that they don't require education. And I would say that's a good pinpoint to say, hey, I can apply to this. Or a lot of roles also say if you don't have that education, blank number of years of experience is eligible as well. So really just taking a look at those job descriptions, but I think you're totally fine to kind of keep it off since you have so many years of experience.
Now another question relevant to that, and I hear this actually a lot. So how do you add education without the completed degree and you're not currently attending?
Yeah, another great question. So I would just say if you didn't complete the degree and you're not currently attending, you can definitely still put on, what education you did complete. So let's say, you were working towards a bachelor's in business administration, but, didn't specifically graduate. So you could always just leave it as bachelor's administration, and then how many years you did complete of education. So if you completed 2 or you completed 3, you can put it as, completed 3 years of education. That way, at least it does show that you have some of those classes under your belt, but you're not necessarily saying you completed the degree. Again, and I think it will depend specifically on the type of role. Even if education, if it's not required, it's not necessarily needed if you have that experience. So it's going to depend on the role, but I think that's safe to say you can put it on there, if you have room. Especially, again, if you have multiple years of experiences and you need that space to fill up with some other experiences, you don't feel like you have to add it if it's not really as relevant. So just playing around with those job descriptions and seeing, okay, what types of jobs am I applying to? Do they need degrees, or can my experience kind of translate into that as well? So it's a little fuzzy, but playing around with those jobs will definitely help you figure out what makes the most sense. And having multiple resumes, I think how we've spoke about that earlier in the presentation, that like having a tailored resume versus a general resume, you can kind of play around with what you add onto it. So.
Okay, Megan, I'm coming to you. Question, I took 2 years off for a medical reason, which is now solved. What can I put, and I'm assuming either on a resume or a cover letter, and just to kind of reiterate, there's a lot of job seekers that take a break in their working experience. Myself, again, sharing my story, I took 2 years off. So overcoming that gap is actually pretty common. But what would you recommend, Megan, in terms of how to overcome that gap in work?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a question I've actually been asked several times before.
Text back to work, explaining an employment gap. Go.indeed.com/back to work.
Nobody really needs to know why you have time off. Medical, that's personal, so it's not something that you need to broadcast to anybody, especially the fact that a lot of resumes are super public. And so anybody could read that, see your name, and then have any sort of, feelings regards to that. So what I would do is then when asked about the gap, so a lot of recruiters will say, so I see that you had a break from here to here. Tell me about that. Tell me about what you did in that time. If in that time you did something personal, let's say you did a course online to learn more about, maybe some kind of technology that the job is looking for, SQL, Python, something like that. That's something that you could have a talking point to. You could talk about a personal reason if you not say the actual reason, but you could just say, I spent time just working on my skills. I spent time with family. A lot of people have kids and that's why there's a gap. But it's something that I wouldn't actually answer in your resume or post anywhere until you're being asked that question. Same thing with disabilities. If you feel that you have a disability and it's something where I know somebody had mentioned diabetes in one of the questions, and I think we'll jump into that in a little bit more detail, but all the private stuff I wouldn't put on your resume as public.
Okay, Tim, I think this is a really good question for you. So what if you are looking to make an industry change, but you don't know what you want to do, only that you need to make a change? How do you let potential employers know you're open to opportunities?
I think that's a great question. One of the things you can do is I would start narrowing your choices down. That would be my first recommendation, right? It's like, what are your passions? Where have you found past success? What do you value for work? Now, if you can narrow it down to like 3 to 4 to 5 different industries, that way you're not necessarily getting stuck in maybe something you don't want to do, but you have an idea. That would be a great place to start. Also, signaling to them that you're open and willing to learn is tailoring your resume towards that opportunity. So you're seeking a new challenge, you're looking for growth, you're looking for more development, whatever those aspects can do, signaling those to recruiters and hiring managers through the avenue and how you're creating your persona, I should say, right? That you're open to new opportunities, because you want to really focus on those aspects. But I would recommend narrowing it down. Let's say just at least 3 to 4 different industry areas. So like maybe it could be sales, but there's tons of different types of sales jobs and you can sell lots of different things. Maybe it's working in customer service, maybe it's working in operations or some sort of data management. There's a lot of different areas, but then even within an industry, there's several sub components of that industry. And so I think canvassing and finding out what you would be really comfortable is a good place to start, and then starting to tailor your resumes for those different areas. I myself did that when I transitioned out of working in higher education, knowing that I had the skill set of teaching, training, educating folks that also went back to my military service. And so I wanted to find some sort of role. I didn't know, but I knew the industry I wanted to get into was learning and development. And so I was interviewing with tons of different companies that had lots of different types of roles. And so I think what you need to do is look at the different type of industries, and then that can help you look at different types of roles that exist within even that industry.
Awesome. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, remember your soft skills that you have from the military or from your previous positions that you can highlight in your skills as well. So that'll open up maybe more of like a personality type role that companies are looking for. So definitely don't forget to highlight both your hard skills and your soft skills. Awesome. Okay, Drew, I have a question for you. Okay, when highlighting your military experience, would you list out each position held? For example, a new section for each company you command, position you held. So I'm assuming talking about maybe cross-rating and as you're promoted through your career experience. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. It really depends on how long have you served, how many positions have you held, and whether it's relevant to the position that you're applying to. It's great practice to really, get excited about what you've done in the military and want to show off everything that you have done. But if it's not relevant to the position that you're applying to, kind of similar to what everyone else has been saying, you want to make sure that it's as targeted as possible. So if you went from one command to another, changed up your MOS, changed up, what your role in the military is, or any type of pivot that you've made, you want to make sure you're not just listing them out to list them out and running through that type of exercise, but you're really thinking about everything you've done. How did that command change, or how has that position really put you in the best light in front of the recruiter that you're the person for the role? So again, it's not just listing stuff out and going through that type of exercise, but making your resume as reflective or as kind of geared to the position as possible for the one that you want to interview for.
Is it okay to reapply for a job if you've already applied for the same position weeks ago, but you didn't hear back from the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's really going to depend on the job. So sometimes it won't actually even let you reapply depending on what systems the employers are using to capture applications. But I would say the best way to handle that is if you haven't heard back, try to do some research on, the company. See if you can find an email address of either a recruiter, or even if it's just like an info at, jobs email address from the company, and just email them and just say you're checking in on your application. You're excited about the opportunity. You really appreciate their time, and see if you can get a response that way. I think that's a good way to try to figure out if your application is still being considered. Sometimes what happens is, as recruiters, we definitely do our best to make sure we get back to all of the applicants as quickly as possible. But if you haven't heard back yet, there could be internal things going on. Maybe they've put a hold on the role, so they haven't really reached out to everybody yet. So I would say use that first. And then if you are able to reapply, it doesn't hurt, but definitely give it a few weeks. But again, it really will depend on the company and if they're able to allow you to apply. But try to find that email address, even LinkedIn, doing some networking that way. Seeing if you can find a recruiter to point you in the right direction. I think that's the best way to handle that situation.
Yeah, and to jump in here too, during this time where jobs are being added to sites and coming off sites kind of on a weekly basis, depending on how or what is going on in the world. Sometimes even at Indeed, we close out jobs that have been filled, but I, kind of reach out to the network and say, hey, these 2 jobs just opened up. It's similar to the job that you just applied to. Just look over the job description, see if it's a good fit. That's something else to put into an exercise that you guys can do. If you applied to a job, you didn't hear back, or the job just closed out, kind of hawk the site and see what other position is very in line with that job. Maybe it's a new one that's even a better fit, and then get after it again. And then utilize LinkedIn as well. Find those recruiters or find anybody else that you might have a connection with in your network and let them know, hey, I just applied to this. Do you have any insight on this position, or we'd love to know more before applying to this? So asking somebody else for help, doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and just to add on to that as well, I love the networking aspect that you all are bringing up. Understand that as you're reading a job description, these are typically the prerequisites that you need to have as your experience to be considered. But there's also some nice to haves that the team does discuss. So if you're not chosen in a position, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not qualified. There could have just been somebody that was a little bit of a better fit. So in terms of experience, maybe they brought something a little bit extra. So don't let that deter you from applying to maybe the same job that's on a different team that could be open as well. So the real trick is to, put yourself out there, apply to the jobs. If you're not getting chosen, take a look at your resume, take a look at your cover letter, and make sure that you're hitting all those aspects. But if you have just that little bit extra, bring it to the top of the resume. Make sure that they're seeing that you are worth the conversation to talk to the recruiter and get in front of the team to be considered. Megan, I'm going to come to you. We have a question. I have had my resume posted on Indeed since becoming unemployed in April, and yet I have had a recruiter reach out to me. Why would an employer search for candidates when they're already receiving overwhelming responses to job announcements? How can I increase my chances of capturing a recruiter's attention?
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. So that's a great one. Sourcing is something that recruiters do and also a sourcing team does, but sourcing is looking for candidates that meet all the qualifications of what you're looking for in a candidate outside of looking at applicants. So It's a skill set that a lot of recruiters look to just to make sure that they're finding candidates that are a good fit. So if your resume is posted on Indeed, very easily recruiters can be going through your resume and other resumes to see if they're a good fit and then inviting you to apply. The fact that you haven't been reached out to yet, there could be a couple of different reasons for that. One, your resume might not be tailored to exactly what you're looking to do. We've talked several times about civilian life and civilian words to kind of explain what you've done and relate your military experience to that. So that's one key thing. Looking at the job descriptions that you're interested in, and then just kind of having some overall generic, we always say targeted resumes, but if you just post your resume on Indeed and you're not targeting to a specific job, target to a specific industry, generic information from that industry. Another thing on that, and what Jackie had just said, is putting things on the top of your resume. So what's most significant? One thing that I think people do on their resume that abstain from doing is, if their school experience was 10, 15 years ago, put it at the bottom of your resume. Put your work experience and what's most relevant and recent to the top. So just make sure that the organization of your resume is there, so that that's kind of the first thing that we see is what job you had and what related to it. But sourcing is the biggest answer for that. So ideally we find your resume and we see that you're a good applicant, and then we reach out to you directly. But there's so many applicants, so sometimes some roles have more sourcing than others, just depending upon the activity on that requisition or that job posting.
Yeah, and to give you a little bit of insight of how many resumes get contacted per month on Indeed. Again, as you saw in the presentation, adding your military service is one of the most important things that you can do, because we really try to make it a two-way street and help employers connect with military talent. By doing so, we see that about 260,000 resumes are contacted per month. So if you're not getting contacted, maybe go in, make some tweaks so your resume comes up as updated. Maybe that's an indicator that an employer says, oh, this person's updated now, I'll reach out to them. If you haven't updated it since April, I would go back in and do so, keeping that military service in there. And again, if you were to start applying to jobs, having that military service in your profile enables employers to target you with relevant jobs that they have on our platform as well. So again, we're making that two-way street, but keeping your resume updated, even if you go in there once a week and just play around with words to see what words work best for you to get contacted, start taking note of that. And it's kind of, citing your scope in and making sure that your resume is targeted to what the recruiters want to say.
Okay, Tim, what if the best matching previous job is from over 10 years ago?
So thank you, Jackie, for dropping that in. I think it's good for you to still, if the experience is relevant, you still want to capitalize on that. The one piece here that I would recommend is do your research on that field and that job now, because if it's post 10 years ago, things have changed in that industry. There's new technologies, there's new developments, there's new cutting edge things and ways of working. And so what you'll want to do is be able to highlight that, or at least talk about it in your cover letter too. Like, I've done a self-study, like you want it to be relevant in your resume, but then maybe in your cover letter, that's where you get that extra inch in that mile, and making sure you highlight that you understand the changes that are going on in the industry and you're staying relevant. That's the thing. It goes back to, if that experience is relevant, that's great. And now you know what's going on for 2020 in that role, in that world, in that field. That'll be really important as well.
Awesome. I love cover letters. That's great. I think we have time for one more question. If we did not get to your questions, we will make sure to send this out with some of the other questions that are answered. But something near and dear to my heart, we have a military spouse. Do I have to reveal this in the interview that I'm a military spouse? I think they wouldn't like me if I say so. Also, are there any companies and jobs that would prefer a military spouse? This is such a crazy year, 2020, but it has really opened a lot of companies' eyes in terms of a military spouse. I personally had a really hard time finding jobs. And I was very open when we were in the military saying, I'm a military spouse. This is why I live in Hawaii. And it was really hard. And what really helped me was I landed a job being a contractor, being a temp, which actually introduced me to recruiting. So on that side, having the opportunity to be a contractor and meet other people in the industries will allow you to network. But again, coming back to 2020, there's a lot of companies that are much more open to people working remote, which is phenomenal for military spouses. Drew, I know that you probably have some comments on this. Companies are targeting you. You typically have some additional certifications or education, very adaptable, can manage in high stress environments. Usually there's a lot of volunteering. I mean, there's just so many great things that you bring to the table. So definitely, I leveraged my cover letter. I would definitely do that. Recommend that you do that as well. But I probably wouldn't come out and just specifically say, hey, I'm a military spouse, but a lot of companies are very open to it if you're coming in person. So I understand what your thoughts are on that, but another shout out, and I know Drew will probably mention, Hiring Our Heroes has a phenomenal spouse networking resources. Please check them out. They're a phenomenal organization.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Yeah, I couldn't echo that enough. Hiring Our Heroes, we partner with them, and we are going to be working with them even more so in the coming year to help military spouses. As Jacqueline mentioned, searching different terms, remote and work from home. If you get the interview, you can bring it up if you want. That's up to you. If there's relevant experience or anecdotes or stories or events in your life as a military spouse that you can exemplify and kind of share why you're the best candidate for the position, I would certainly bring that up. Also, do your research. All the company pages on Indeed, you can start searching and doing a little bit of research before you even take an interview or before you apply to certain companies. There's a lot of companies out there looking for military spouses. There's a lot of companies out there that count a military spouse hire the same as a veteran hire. So when you see companies make those goals of 50,000 veterans, military spouses are now a part of that equation. So there's been huge changes in the past just 2 years alone. Use your best discretion. You use what you think is going to help you get the job. If you kind of are scared to bring it up, don't bring it up. But again, if you network, you know that this company hires military spouses, and what you've done as a military spouse lends you to be the best candidate for the job. 100%, wear it on your sleeve as a badge of honor, and be proud of being a spouse. And I think the companies could be proud to hire you as well.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us on this webinar today. Again, thank you so much. We wish you all the best of luck. Happy belated Veterans Day. And again, have a great week, and I hope to see you soon.
Text JobCast by Indeed